Hey, what's up? This is a review of the Zelos Horizons V2 GMT. So that's version 2 of the Horizons GMT series. And this particular execution colorway is called the Frost, mainly because of the frost white dial and the way the bezel is black and white for the daytime and nighttime of the 24-hour scale representative. And it's a pretty cool version. Unfortunately, it's been long sold out. I forget exactly when this was released. Um, this isn't mine, and it's not from Zelos. Well, not directly, rather. Just on loan from a friend who bought this. Um, yeah, he bought this pretty much on launch, and these guys sell out quick, as you know how Zelos do. Let's see. Let's get some of the dimensions out of the way pretty quickly. I believe it's using 316L steel. Case size is supposed to be 40 millimeters, but the bezel is actually 38.5. If you notice, it's actually narrower, not as wide as the case. You can see right there, and maybe a little bit on this side if I bring it down a little. Yeah. Thickness is I believe 11 millimeters to the bezel, but if you count this thick box sapphire crystal, that adds another 2.5 millimeters. So the total would be approximately 13.5. But yeah, and lug to lug, I believe it is, if I remember correctly, I think it's 38.5 or so. Could be wrong, but it's relatively short too. And that's basically it for the size dimensions. This is using the Swiss ETA Elaborate grade 2893-2, very common GMT, Swiss GMT movement. This one has been seems to be regulated and running very well. For my usage and also my friends, it's hold time very well. For me, I personally experience basically, I think, I swear it was no more than +1 or +2 seconds per day. It may vary depending on what I'm doing. I don't think it'll be higher than a +4, but it's holding time very well, which is great. And we'll get into the movement that they use in here in this specific example in a moment, because I guess there's something a little extra special with this particular example. And I believe these were limited to about 200, which actually maybe fewer than that. I think it's actually maybe 100, yeah. So this one is number, let's show you the back here. If I can get this in focus, bear with me for a moment. There we go. So you can see some of the specs around here. 2093-2 usually. Sapphire. I'm not sure about the back, but definitely the front. And this is number 53 out of 100. So pretty rare in terms of numbers. I don't think, unfortunately, they will probably make any more of this example. He usually does one run and then that's it. Especially when they're limited this low. I can imagine they probably all but sold out on the first day, or not much more beyond that. Since I'm on the back, let's go over the movement. So this is, you can see it's got that nice custom rotor that's in like a, I don't think it's bronze, but it's basically probably like a rose gold plated rotor that's got like a world map on there. Makes sense, this is a GMT, so it's very appropriate, pretty cool. And why this, I was saying earlier, why this particular example is a little extra special above your other V2 versions of the Horizon GMT, is that story is, from the previous version, the V1, they did have this movement with, if you can see the decoration on it, it's got the perlage work, and it's just a little nicely decorated. And I think there's a little bit going on. Let me see here. Yeah, on the outer edge here, some sort of I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, lighting. But yeah, there's just some extra decorations up in the background here. It's like some striping. Is that just a reflection? Hard to tell, actually. Anyways, the main thing is the pelage work, and because the when they went to the V2 version, basically they had stopped getting the movements with the decoration for some reason, and so they're more plain and undecorated for the most part, except for that custom rotor. So, but a small handful of the remaining movements that Ocean had from Zelos, I guess, were still decorated. So some of them got into some of the V2 models. And so if you're lucky enough to have gotten one of those, um, not that the undecorated version is a worse movement or anything, but I think it's kind of nice, and just again that little extra special um, uh, notoriety or difference between the other V2s is that this happens to have one that's fully more fully decorated, which is pretty cool. So that's a nice little bonus that really can't you couldn't have ordered or specifically asked for as far as I know. But if you got that lot, then congratulations, right? It's kind of neat just to have that extra detail since you got a display case back anyways on these. So that's basically that. And yeah, this watch is pretty cool. I mean, it's I definitely think it's an improvement over the previous uh, the V1, I guess. I think there's been some improvement in the sapphire bezel insert for one thing. When I remember looking at the first version when I actually got to saw it before it actually went to production. I went to a Worn and Wound windup in San Francisco. That was probably I believe that was pretty much the first year I went there and had a look at it in person and met Ocean, and it's great to go to events. I hope we can go back to it again once this pandemic ends and we can get back into a more social environment, because those events are really cool, and they're free too, and it's a great way to meet the owners and check out the watches up hand, because you rarely can see micro brands in the metal except after you buy it, right? So it's good to see them in person before you get to commit to anything, and you see upcoming things such as the V1 at the time. But anyways, I've seen pictures and it didn't impress me at the time. I think something about the bezel, the way they did the numbers and everything, looked not contrasty enough. Of course, this is black and white, but above all else, I think the way the numbers were done, maybe even the markings, but primarily the numbers, they were they seemed to be a bit small, or rather maybe they were too big. Like they barely fit into the bezel, so it felt like part of the tops of the numbers were cut off um, uh, on the V1 version. At least that's what it always looked like to me, and it didn't look quite that good. And I think if we can get closer here, he's improved that. It doesn't give me that feeling that the tops have been cropped off or like too tightly pushed up against the outer edge of the bezel. So I'm pretty sure that's. I don't know if it's been mentioned anywhere, but I believe that for me that looks like an improvement. Not sure I think he's maybe changed that inner chaptering with the 24 hours. I think it used to come in more and made it look a little bit tighter and the dial smaller. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that got pushed or angled out differently so that it's a steeper angle so that it can open up the dial slightly more to be, I think, slightly bigger than the previous version, if I understand it correctly. So reading it on straight on, you're not going to really be able to read it that well because it's such a vertical, I guess, wall of the outer chapter ring for the 24-hour scale inside there. So you just turn a slight angle, you start to see it better, and that's usually on wrist. It's plenty fine to be able to tell what it is. And yeah, so this is the frost version. So what sets it apart besides the colorway is, because of the colorway, I guess, is the full lume dial. And as you're going to see later in the lume shots, uh, there's a mixture of BGW9 and which is closed blue, and C3, which is green, and it makes for a great combination. And I'll explain why later. The They got nice applied indexes, right? Indices around here, and I think he made a smart choice in not making the frames of the indices and the hands completely bright silver high polish. In fact, it's actually more of I would consider a gunmetal color, so it's darkened. It's kind of like a polished gray um, tone, right? So that's looking pretty good. So it's just easier. It makes, for the most part, it's darkened, and you'll probably capture more darker reflections and light. But even it does capture light because the base color is basically dark anyways. For the most part, a lot of it looks practically black, and so you just get that nice contrast and legibility, and it looks cleaner than something that's completely high polish, especially against a white dial and background. Right, it just looks this looks better. You got an orange accent for the GMT pointer hand, and at the pointer end of that hand, and and then the other orange is indicated inside the 24-hour scale, just mainly in the numbers. The indexes, the lines there are black, but I guess it's a nice tie-in to the GMT function of that hand with the GMT scale on the inside, and then the water resistance of 200 meters is right there in red. Um, you know, I think it looks all right. But if I were to say something about the colors used, maybe if you had picked one or the other instead of having red and orange would have been better. I don't think you needed to throw in, I guess, essentially, what is that, a fourth color, because you basically have black, white, and orange accents for the most part. And then that's in red. I think, I don't know, probably would have been better if that was an orange too, or made the hands pointer, the triangle, and the numbers also red, conversely, instead of adding just basically a fourth color. But it's not a huge bothersome, it's not a real deal breaker. It's not a bothersome issue, but thought to be noted. Case is very nicely designed, a bit angular, but it's got some curvature too. It's got some nice beveling that's high polish, but for the most part, the watch is brushed. And what's nice about the bracelet is that it's get this back in focus. It has beveled edges on the sides here, the corners, which a lot of watch companies don't bother to do, and so that's a nice touch there, just to add some extra finishing work and make it softer around there. This is using a fairly standard clasp that you might see, but it's got plenty of micro adjustments. Fortunately, this does not have like the newest Zelos class, which is basically a copy of, like, since I haven't read, this is Christopher Ward style of class, which is, I think, one of the best ones because it's simple, dual button push release, and it's got the micro adjustment without tools on the inside, right? You just push this lever, and then you can pull the adjust the micro adjust about 4 positions, and that's great. And so the new Zeloses have that. But this was before the most recent times when they started implementing that. And as of the date of this recording, it is January, not the 8th. It's actually more the January 6th. It's actually past midnight. 2021 is for time reference when this is being recorded. But overall, it's a pretty nice design. The belt, you see that did an interesting thing with the grip or the texture around the bezel. It's got a slight beveled edge around here, but it doesn't have all these this coinage all around. It's got like a blank space here at the, I guess, the cardinals, you could say. Overall, it's all right, but to be honest, I find it not necessarily the best grip. Um, Perhaps if this wasn't rounded over and you left a more right-angled edge on here, you might actually get a little bit more of a purchase on that corner of the where the this coin edge texture is, right? It just probably grab onto your finger and skin a little bit better. As it is, it's kind of smoothed out, and unless you're grabbing directly from the side, um, uh, which you can do, but usually people with their fingers, you grab a bit of the top corner or portion of the bezel, right? So it can feel a little slippery at times. And you'll check out the bezel action here. It's 48 clicks bidirectional, which is a proper uh, feature function for a GMT bezel, because you don't need 60 clicks, you don't need 120, and some people have an odd 90 click bezel, right? Or 60 won't quite do it either, right? So 48 is good because you get the 24 hours, and you can actually do the finer increments of 30 minutes in between, and that's plenty, I think, of adjustment there for this. If you're going to use it as a dive time reference, which you could, of course, the reference numbers here are not 5, 10, 15, whatever you normally get, but it's not that hard to figure out for if you want to use it for some bit of timing, like if you wanted to set it to this minute hand, 5 minutes pass, we'll be right by here, 10, right, 15, and so forth. I don't know, most of us who've had experience with enough watches, especially dive watches, you're going to figure this out and convert the scale pretty easily in your head. But it's a pretty firm click, I guess. It's a ball bearing system, and so it falls into place. But I would say, again, not the best grip for me, at least. And is it a little too stiff? I guess it could be a little bit lighter. I do find I have to put extra pressure or grip to really grip it. And there is a bit of play, as you can see. It's not a deal breaker because you only got 48 positions, and so wherever it's kind of, it might be a little bit off on, you know where it's going to land. It's basically right over the spot that you need it to be. But I think it would have been nicer if that was tightened up a bit, so you didn't. For me, it just seems like any kind of unnecessary play is unnecessary. So that's something, if any of you other folks that have the style of watch are experiencing, I think this is something I would definitely improve. It's not my, compared to my Zen 104, which has 60 click ball bearing bidirectional bezel, that feels really nice, and it turns much better, and it doesn't have this kind of wiggle play once you get into position. It just sets itself into the next position, and it's there. So that's something I would change or improve upon if you could. Well, I guess we're leading into some of the negatives about this. I would say, besides that, that's one thing that, again, could be improved. I think there's just not much else, actually. I don't know what you can do with the inner 24-hour scale. It's all right. But, from most angles from the top, unless you really start turning it over, it kind of disappears. And especially with this box crystal, that kind of tends to make it distort out of visibility, if you know what I mean. So there's that. But with the size of this watch and what they're trying to do, and they already made this bezel rather thin too, so they kind of maximize as much of the dial as they could without making it look too small. I'm not sure you could do other than to perhaps actually print it on the flat part of the dial. I don't know. It's a little nitpicky. It works, and besides, to be honest, for me, if I were using such a watch, I'm not that concerned about seeing those. I kind of know what the 24-hour scale is anyways, based off of just the 12-hour dial. It's not that hard to figure out. And usually this will be, unless I have it set to a different time zone, which generally I don't need to, because even though I have mini GMT, I just leave it at the default position and just rely on the bezel to see my 24-hour scale, just to read time in 24 hours, not necessarily to track a second time zone or possibly a third. Yeah, for me, GMTs don't have much use in my life, but I do like them still, just for their style and general looks. And that's why, if you see my past videos, I've actually owned quite a number of these GMT watches. But anyways, I think my main niggle is, and this has been mentioned, I think I can think of only one of the channels mentioned this off the top of my head, but it always stuck with me. It was from Take Time with Patrick Marlette. He reviewed this model, or well, not the specific colorway, but I think the V2, if not the V1. And I don't think anything's really changed for that, but I do agree and find that the minute hand is a little bit too long. You know, it does go all the way to the edge, and in some ways it looks like it surpasses it a bit, but it's very close to the edge. And normally that wouldn't be such an issue. I mean, the GMT hand goes all the way to the edge, which is fine. It looks actually pretty nice and tight that way. But my issue is that the minute hand is rather blunt. You know, it's kind of it's almost squared off, but it's got a little bit of rounding, but it's rather blunt. So what happens is, when you get to the top of the minute, exactly to the minute, or you're trying to set the time, for instance, it completely blocks the index, right, marker. So, I mean, you should be able to tell what it is based off the other markers, but say you're trying to set the time, it's a bit of guesswork to see if it's really truly aligned. You kind of have to base it off of fitting it in between markers and judging that space between them, just to figure to best guesstimate that's the center line with the index that it's covering, if you know what I mean. And that does bug me a bit. It does kind of hinder some of the instant legibility, because you know, it does block the index, the minute that's supposed to be, you would like to, or you're supposed to be reading. And so if it was just either taken back a bit, or perhaps better yet, it's covered now, but you know, if it was more like the hour hand, where it's, see how at least it tapers and it's more narrow, that will at least free up, you know, be able to see the end of the minute marker. Let me just hack this and pull it back so you can see. I mean, so you'd have to, like you were saying at the time, you'd have to kind of guesstimate. Okay, I think this is about where it should be, right? And then set it, and hopefully when it goes around, it is lined to that. Sometimes the way watches work, sometimes it is a little bit offset once you've you know, push the crown in to get the movement moving, and then sometimes actually have just a little delay or whatever, and it might be a slightly off position, and you have to, I don't know, I'm kind of anal like that, but I'd hack it again and readjust the minute, and then I'd think, okay, how much does it look like it's off by, and then try to compensate for that, and then when it's time to push the crown in to get it going and resynced with actual time, and then we'll see where it's at. But yeah, you know what I mean? So just reading the time can be a slight hindrance, because the minute hand is pretty much completely blocking the index. You know, if it was at least a pointed end, at least you got a more finer tip to more definitely see exactly where it's hovering over, you know. And if it's not more pointed like the GMT hand, that's all I'm saying. It either needs to be shorter so you can see the index, or more pointed. I think that's something that could or should be improved upon. The crown action's all right. It's got a little wiggle, but it's fine. And unlike some of the other Zeloses, the crown is not loomed. So you'll see that in the loom shot later, or rather you won't because it's not loomed. Usually the Zelos logos on a lot of the Zelos watches have been loomed. And before I get into a wrist shot real quickly, this is the box, typical wooden, I guess, cigar style box, magnetic closure. You can see the magnetic portions here, and as usually you'll follow by a watch roll. This is one of the newer colorways for the leather watch roll. It used to be basically kind of a blue color, at least when I had it. And what you get in here, make sure I don't accidentally swipe my other watch off the table, is basically 4 slots, an embossed logo. You get also a tropic strap with that, and I guess you have to reuse the spring bars. Unless he gave you an extra set, but this is what my friend provided as the kit to me just to borrow and check out, because I was considering purchasing off of him because I always liked this version. I thought it was probably the best version out of the all, because I like that just clean black and white look. I don't mind this few splashes of color, but I think I like the way this bezel was done in half black and half white. That makes sense. And the full loom dial is different than the other ones because there are no other full loom dials in the Horizon GMT line. As far as I know, I can remember, it's got to be the only white dial version. There is a new version that's, I think, is slightly smaller case at 39 or 38. That's the Horizons, but it's just a diver. It doesn't have the GMT function, and has a dive time bezel, or possibly I think you might have a choice of a 12-hour bezel instead. And yeah, but then I think it's very similar. The only thing is the bezel is fully white, which is okay, but I kind of like the fact that this still has like some black in it instead of having the white dial and the white bezel. That might be a little too much white at once. But anyways, and there's the extra links and your warranty card, which is also done in that. I'm pretty sure this is not bronze. It's probably like a plated rose gold piece here, but nice and pretty cool nonetheless. Not a lot of people have metal warranty cards like that. And that's the basic gist of it for the watch roll. It just folds over. So, and I think I like this colorway too more than the bluish or almost like a dark teal that the previous Zelos watches had. I like this kind of faded brownish gray leather, kind of distressed looking leather. So this watch is 40 millimeters and actually looks and wears smaller because the bezel is actually smaller than the actual case diameter. And some they think maybe that's too small, but for my wrist that I wear this on, which is just under 7 inches. Okay, I'm not sure why I got cut off, but I need to make this short because I'm running out of space. Anyways, so it wears pretty good for a wrist size. Even with the box sapphire crystal, you don't really count that as the thickness. So really, you're looking at an 11 millimeter thickness, right? And the lug to lug and the general size of the watch is what you're measuring this by. And it doesn't sit too tall. It's got good, looks good. And I would definitely recommend this if they still have these available. But maybe on the secondary market, people might be selling these. But again, look for you're going to want to look for to see if that particular model has the decorated movement or not, if that matters to you. But I think a premium might be charged because of that, just because of its rarity, and it's different than probably most of the other ones that's come out since. So let me try to quickly get into a loom shot and close out. Okay, here we go. So let me just hit this again real quick. So you can see BGW9, if my color grading works. Here, let me just tone this down a little bit. There we go. So BGW9 on the blue glow on the dial, and the bezel, it's reversed, just the number and indexes on the top. You can actually see it better than probably my camera can pick up right now. It's probably struggling with the ISO. But anyways, and then the GMT hand is actually blue too. But the rest of it, the indexes are green, and so is the hands. So that offers good contrast. And I say that's good, especially when things start to dim. There's enough definition between the green tone and blue, I think, to see it at night. The bezel might be a little bit hard to read, especially the upper half, because of the indexes and numbers are so thin. I used to have a watch that was all aluminum too, but everything else was all blue. So when it dimmed, you really had a hard time seeing the hands, because actually the thickness of the hands, like the frame of it, wasn't enough too to define it. So I think this one's thicker, and because of the green loom, color-wise, it also defines contrast against the dial better. So that's about it. I'm gonna have to get into I think some closing thoughts before I run out of space on my card. Hang on. Okay, so that concludes pretty much my review of this watch. Hope that was informative. Hope I didn't miss anything. If you have any questions, let me know. I think my friend's trying to sell this, so if you're interested, let me know, and I can maybe give you or I can give him your contact number. Have to switch to internal recording. So, anyways, again, interested? Just tell me. Well, look for me on Instagram at ChronoCraze. That's with KHRONOKRAZE. And you can eye me there. And then, if you're really interested, I can pass your information on to my friend, and you can get in contact. He's kind of on the fence. I mean, he told me he could keep it, or he might sell it. I think he's leaning towards selling it, but anyways, but yeah, I think it'd be worth picking up. I mean, this is a really cool colorway. I think the proportions are great. The build quality is good. This is running really well too. You got a unique style for a GMT watch, I would say. In terms of the full lume dial, this particular execution with just the frost with the white and black bezel, which is pretty cool. And you got the watch roll and the case, nice box. You can still use that, right? And Tropic strap, don't forget that. And I did mention, yeah, this version does have the fully decorated movement, versus some of them do not. So that's kind of a little extra special piece there. And since this was only limited to 100-piece run, that's all you're gonna get, right? So yeah, you could wait and see what else comes out, but it's not likely this particular execution, this colorway, it's going to be repeated again. At least not exactly. Well, we'll see. Who knows? Nothing's impossible, but I think generally once it's done, and he moves on to a newer version or something else. And that's about it. So thanks for watching, and catch me in the next. I'm trying to get up. I got a bunch of reviews in the queue that I need to put together and process and put out there. But it's been so busy. I have a few times, but I'm going to try to put out some more stuff. Some older stuff, like, not the newest watches, but nonetheless, and some new. Like, I got to do one on this Christopher Ward by One and Wound limited edition Sandstorm C65. Great watch. Going to be one of the few keepers that I'm going to keep in my collection. So I've been, this is almost 3 weeks running, and yeah, it's really great. So we'll look for that coming up pretty soon. And thanks for watching again. So catch you in the next.